You are listening to the JIF podcast. Welcome. Welcome to the second episode of the JIF podcast, an initiative of the Global Inclusive Insurance Facility, where we highlight ideas and voices shaping the future of inclusive insurance and development impact. On this episode, we are joined by Dr. Arup Banerji, Director of Knowledge and Learning at the World Bank Group. Arup leads the World Bank Group Academy, which is an initiative at the very heart of the World Bank's identity as a knowledge bank, working to ensure that knowledge doesn't just exist within the institution, but actively reaches and empowers the people and governments it serves. But before we jump right in, Dr. Arup, I would like to give you the floor to introduce yourself.
I'm Arup Banerji. I'm the Director for Knowledge and Learning for the World Bank Group. In today's conversation, what I'd like to discuss is the new World Bank Group Academy, and especially its impact programs, which aim to harness the power of peer-to-peer learning across countries and across the public and private sectors to deliver real solutions to countries and industries across the world.
Dr. Arup, we are really delighted to have you on the JIF podcast. The work that you lead sits at the very core of how the World Bank Group creates and shares knowledge. So there's no better place to start than the beginning, right? The World Bank Group has long described itself as a knowledge bank with knowledge at the very center of its work. From your perspective, how is the World Bank Group Academy bringing this concept to life today? What are the key components and highlights you would like to share with us today?
So, the World Bank Group has talked about being a knowledge bank for a long time. So, what's different today? What's different is that we are much more focused and intentional on what kind of knowledge actually helps countries and firms make better decisions, and focused on ensuring that solutions that work and have an impact can move across countries and across contexts. At the heart of that, it's a simple shift, moving from knowledge just as, big books, reports, and advice, to knowledge that is globally sourced, that is hands-on experience that's tested in real settings, and that is constantly improved through practice. And the World Bank Group Academy is a big part of how we are doing that. Instead of starting with theory, the Academy starts with real problems countries are facing, like how to finance disaster risks, how to expand health coverage, how to manage energy transitions. So this learning brings together what we are seeing across countries and regions, what's worked, what hasn't, and the practical know-how that comes from being deeply involved in implementation. This is important, because our strongest knowledge doesn't come from one single place. It comes from patterns, it comes from experiences, from working with finance ministries in Europe, from disaster agencies in Asia, from utilities in Africa, from firms and investors across markets, and then distilling from that what is transferable and what needs to be adapted. So at the World Bank Group, what excites me most is how this knowledge keeps getting better and better over time. As countries apply these approaches, as teams learn from the next round of implementation, that experience feeds back into the knowledge system. So the next country that does something doesn't start from scratch. They start from a stronger, more practical base. So the Academy also helps translate that knowledge into something people can actually use. Leaders, practitioners, they learn together. They compare approaches across countries and contexts. And they leave not just with ideas, but with tools, examples, and a clearer sense of what's feasible in their own context. In that sense, the World Bank Group Academy is a bridge. It's a bridge between the Knowledge Bank vision and real-world impact. It helps turn global experience into practical capability, and it helps those capabilities scale across countries rather than just living in individual projects or individual teams. This is the part that I find most energizing, seeing knowledge evolve through use and then traveling, backed by evidence, shaped by experience, and applied where it matters the most.
Well, I must say that is a compelling picture, Arup. And of course, the real test is whether that impact endures, right? How do you ensure that the Academy's work creates lasting, sustainable impact? Are there any examples where it has genuinely shifted mindsets?
Lasting impact really comes down to one simple question. Does the learning change how decisions get made after the workshop is over? So that's why the Academy is designed not as a training provider. It's more a platform for scaling what works across people, across institutions, and across countries. So this is conceptual. Practically, though, that means three things. First, we start with live country problems, not abstract content. So learning is anchored in real fiscal choices, real policy trade-offs, and real institutional constraints inside ministries of finance or line agencies or public and private collaboration frameworks. This is where decisions actually stick. So that's the first one, live country problems. Second, we design for peer learning at scale. When leaders and implementers hear how others have solved similar problems, especially from countries and firms at different stages, it shifts mindsets. It helps people move from, oh, this is interesting, to, wow, this is doable in my context. And third, we stay engaged long enough for ideas to move from insight to adoption, linking learning to analytics tools, and importantly, follow up so it becomes part of how systems operate, not just a one-off conversation. So three things: live country problems, peer learning at scale, and staying engaged for a while. So let me give you a couple of examples of how that plays out. And let me take the case of our Academy Impact Program on disaster risk financing. 2 countries. Take Albania for one. A few years ago, disaster financing there was largely reactive, figuring out funding after the disaster was actually hit. Now, through work supported by the Academy Impact Program, the mindset has shifted towards financial preparedness, understanding fiscal exposure upfront, adopting a national disaster risk financing strategy, and clearly matching instruments to different layers of risk, such as budget contingencies for frequent events, a contingent credit for medium shocks, and for rarer ones, insurance. And just as important, by the way, it brought the Ministry of Finance and disaster management authorities into the same room, working from a shared framework. That's a shift also in how the problem itself is defined. In another example, the Philippines already had strong disaster management systems. So there, the focus wasn't on starting from scratch. It was about refining it and scaling it, optimizing risk layering, integrating the disaster risk financing more tightly into public financial management, and in aligning the national and local financing mechanisms so that responses could be faster and, importantly, more predictable. Across both these cases, the common thread is that learning sticks when it changes who owns the problem, how risks are framed, and how decisions are made over time. That's the Academy Impact Program's role in the broader scaling up story, helping countries move from isolated good practice to institutionalized methods that last.
That is a powerful example. And it's clear that when learning sticks, it changes not just what people know, but how they work. And of course, that kind of shift rarely happens in isolation. It depends on how well teams across an organization can actually come together around those shared goals. So with that in mind, Arup, and we start to come to an end of this interview, what do you think is working well in terms of collaboration across units? And where could it go further and how can it be made better?
Collaboration really sits at the heart of whether solutions actually take root, or just stay as good ideas on paper. So, what's working well today? Well, we're seeing much stronger connections between our global teams, who bring experience from around the world, and our country teams, who are on the ground every day working with governments and firms. When those two perspectives come together early, solutions are far more likely to fit local realities and also last over time. Again, disaster risk financing is a good example. In countries like Albania, the Kyrgyz Republic, global experts brought tried and tested ways of thinking about how governments can prepare financially for disasters. That was inspired by real-world experiences in Morocco and Turkey. But it was the country teams who worked day to day with ministries of finance and emergency agencies and the private sector who helped translate those ideas into something that worked within the local budget systems and within the local institutions. That combination is what helped shift thinking from just how do we pay after a disaster to how do we plan ahead and reduce shocks before they happen. The second area where collaboration has become stronger is across the World Bank Group itself, between our private sector teams and our public sector teams. Disaster risk financing really depends on this. Governments set the rules and they manage public finances, but private insurance and capital markets play a critical role in spreading risk and delivering protection at scale. In countries like the Philippines, we've seen public sector teams working closely with colleagues focused on insurance markets and risk transfer. That has helped connect government strategies with real private sector solutions, making disaster financing faster, more reliable, and easier to scale across national and local levels. You asked where this could go further. Well, two things stand out. First, teams can come together even earlier, before the solutions are shaped. Too often, collaboration still kicks in once a direction is already set. Starting earlier would make it easier to align public goals, private capacity, and also country realities from the outset. Second, we do need to make collaboration the default way of working, not something that's added on. When people see cross-team work as central to getting results rather than an added burden, then it will become much easier to sustain. And that's also where the World Bank Group Academy adds value. It creates a shared space where global specialists, country teams, and public and private counterparts learn together around real problems. That shared understanding makes it so much easier to carry collaboration back to everyday work, and also, therefore, to scale solutions across countries rather than reinventing them one by one by one.
From what I hear, it's clear that collaboration is not just a nice to have, Dr. Arup. It's really the engine behind how the Academy delivers impact at scale. And listening to everything you've shared today, from the way knowledge is being reimagined to the mindset shifts happening on the ground in places like Albania and the Philippines, to the deeper cross-sector partnerships being built, it all points to an initiative that is very much in motion. So looking ahead, Dr. Arup, where do you see all this heading? What's next for the Academy, and what's on the horizon in terms of reach, maybe even new partnerships and the tools you're building toward?
Well, I see the Academy evolving in three main ways. The first is drilling down on actual impact. again by engaging even more closely with those who make changes happen. We want to engage many more practitioners, the right people, who are closer to implementation, whether they be in land ministries, the local governments, or the private sector, because that's where day-to-day decisions are really made, where learning can have a direct impact on outcomes if they are empowered, both with the ability and the learning. And we want to focus in on our main objective, which is to ensure that proven solutions that change the lives of people can travel seamlessly across borders and boundaries. Second, we want to go much deeper into practical problem solving. The Academy, by design, is moving beyond the standalone learning moments that has been typical of learning towards working alongside teams as they tackle real challenges. Again, bringing in the global experience, tools, and data at the points where decisions are being made and being combined with country and firm realities. So learning becomes part of the work itself, not something that is separate from it. Third, we're investing in new ways to capture and share experience at scale. So much of the most valuable knowledge is tacit knowledge, which is embedded in judgments, in how to sequence choices, and in lessons that have been learned along the way. And those are rarely available. But emerging technologies, including and especially AI, give us new ways to surface patterns from across our work with countries and firms, so that insights don't remain isolated but can be used to inform others quickly and continuously. Now, speaking of AI, I want to be very clear that technology is an enabler, not a substitute. The most powerful learning still comes from trust-based, candid exchanges among peers, where people feel comfortable sharing not just what worked, but what didn't work. The Academy's role is to strengthen those human connections and not replace them. And you can already see where this is headed in areas like disaster risk insurance. Officials and insurers in countries that pioneered the public-private schemes, such as Turkey and Morocco, are now exchanging experience with all of the peers. In the Philippines, as I mentioned, in Albania, Kyrgyz, and others. Tools do help making that experience easier to access, but it's the ongoing conversations and relationships that turn lessons into actual impact. So that ultimately is where the Academy continues to go. It is helping practical knowledge circulate faster, improve through use, and support better decision-making, so that when challenges actually do arise, countries are better prepared and people are better protected.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arup. I really appreciate you taking the time to share all of this. This has been such an insightful conversation. The picture you painted of the World Bank Group Academy is one of something that doesn't just talk about knowledge, but really puts it to work in real countries with real people and on real challenges. And I think what stays with me most is that it was never meant to be a training provider, but more a platform for scaling what actually works across people, institutions, and countries. You can see that in the way learning is being rethought, in the mindset shifts happening on the ground, and in the deeper collaboration across sectors that you mentioned throughout our interview. And with technology there to support that, not to replace it. It really feels like something that is building momentum and continuing to evolve. We look forward to following that journey with you. Thank you again.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. For the Academy, and for me personally, I wanted to share the most motivating thing. It's the people behind the work. Those people who are willing to share generously their own hard-won experience, who are willing and open to learn from each other, and who keep pushing for better outcomes even when the path isn't quite obvious. So being able to support that kind of learning across countries and across contexts is something I feel genuinely grateful for.